today we're going to talk about a pretty serious issue, and that is the addictive nature of sports card breaking and collecting. And yes, we've talked about this a heck of a lot on the channel in the past, but a Reddit thread popped up in the last few days that sort of brought it front of mind for me again. So I want to talk about it. Number one, to remind you guys that this is still a big problem, especially in 2025. I want to point people in the right direction for where they can seek support if they need it or know somebody themselves that does. And then also highlight some of the mockery, the trivialization that I've seen on social media regarding this specific story, which I thought was pretty disappointing and I think speaks to some of the reason why people in the hobby are not taking this issue as seriously as they should. And then I also want to talk about what more, breaking platforms like Whatnot and Fanatics Live could do to protect consumers from themselves. So I want to unpack all those things today and then sort of chat with you guys down in the comments below. Now, this is the thread over here. Their husband is a basketball card addict. I've seen a few people on YouTube talk about this. I saw Neo talk about it. I haven't seen his video yet. But what this post goes on to say is that they're desperate. Their husband has spent over $300,000 on cards in the last 5 years, which is utterly insane. And they've got a $100,000 credit card debt, which is mind-boggling to me. I don't understand how you can have a credit card with that much value on there, but it is what it is. They cannot stop buying. It has utterly wrecked our otherwise pretty good marriage. They have a 4-year-old, which is, incredibly heartbreaking to read, to be perfectly honest with you. And they don't want to split up their family, but the sneakiness, lies, and financial betrayal around this hobby has destroyed me. I asked him to be done and consign the whole lot, but he says that cannot be done. Instead, he is selling them off super slowly and at a rate less than what he is compulsively continuing to buy. This is a sickness, which I completely agree with. I was so supportive in the beginning until pretty quickly it showed he couldn't keep the budgets and was subtly being sneaky and lying. I want him to be able to sell the whole lot and immediately. Can anyone help direct me? Now, I can't recall if I said what the money was being spent on. There are some comments here from the original poster that go on to say that they found some transactions history that said they were entering into breaks. So I think it's like 99% certain to say all the money was basically spent on breaks, especially when you see comments like this from the original poster where they say he will lose too much value if he goes ahead and sells cards, because that tells me he's either bought a lot of sealed wax or entered in breaks himself, because you never make money on those unless you're incredibly lucky. And it's one of those ones that's really bloody disappointing to read, and it honestly hits home, especially the part there where he says he has a 4-year-old. I have a 3-year-old and a soon-to-be 1-year-old, and just sort of putting myself in that shoes, it's really sort of scary. And I think I've talked about this before on the channel, where that first video that I referenced in the intro from 2022, it says, 2 years ago, but if you go to the actual video itself, you'll see here that I believe it was posted on June 7th, 2022. I spoke about some of my own challenges within this hobby, where I think I talked about I was buying really heavy into breaks. I want to say like 2013, 14, 15 with Cherry Collectibles. And, I reached a point where I felt like I was buying too much. And that was primarily because it's really easy to enter into breaks, right? You just send some money on PayPal, then boof, bam, you're done. And all of a sudden you're in debt. Now, I was really lucky that I came out on top, actually hit some pretty big cards. So I made a lot of money doing it. But I had to take a step back to sort of say, hey, you sort of are going down a slippery slope here. You need to be a bit more wise and sort of stop doing it. And I sort of, got a bit lucky there. And I've got a very addictive personality. I've talked about that before. I've got a very compulsive personality. So I saw the writing on the wall and I sort of got out before it got too bad for me. And that's why, I'm so passionate about this topic. And that's why I referenced this video that I'm showing now on screen in my original video, because this guy really hit home with his video. His name is George Wiley. Now, I can't show you his exact video again because it looks like his YouTube channel was deleted. And his video at the time, which was posted in February 2021, was about how basketball card collecting nearly destroyed his life, the dark side of card collecting. Now, as of 2022, it had 150,000 views and he had 3,000 subscribers. Now, I couldn't find this video again because it looks like it was deleted. But what he spoke about was he entered into breaks and then he decided to become a breaker himself. And what he sort of found was things got a bit, sketchy, where all of a sudden he saw challenges that his customers were facing. And then all of a sudden, people weren't entering breaks anymore. So he started filling in spots for himself and backfilling his breaking spots. And all of a sudden getting more and more into debt. And he just saw all these problems and he got into a really, unfortunate situation financially where he almost lost his house and things like that. And he spoke about it in video. Now, obviously I'm trying to remember everything that I said. The video is not live anymore, so I can't go back and reference it. But it was really scary to sort of hear and listen to his story. And it hit home for me, like I said, when I had those challenges myself, over 10 years ago. And one of those ones where every time I've talked about it, people in this space sort of seem to trivialize the issue, not really say it's a problem, when in reality, it's clearly a problem, right? You've got people that are having this issue day in, day out, and it's getting, worse and worse when you look at how the modern hobby actually works. Whatnot and Fanatics Live make it so easy to spend money. You're literally just there pressing a button. It's one of those ones where you can really go down a slippery slope a lot quicker than what you could have in the past. And people don't appreciate the addictive nature of it, the ability for you to chase money, and you just get deeper and deeper into debt. And we don't see enough from these corporations. We don't see enough from breakers themselves to protect consumers. And in the past, I've had a lot of pushback when I've gone ahead and made those kinds of statements, especially when I've had videos around people getting scammed. People will come out and say, well, you know, you can't protect people from themselves. They want to be babies. They want to make mistakes. So be it. They want to get scammed and not do their own research. So be it. So what? Like, you can't help everyone, which I call complete bullshit on, to be perfectly honest with you. We, as a hobby, need to be protecting our fellow collectors and friends from, you know, themselves. If they sort of don't know something or need to do more research, we should be there to help, right? If you're a business operating in this space, you should be doing everything for the customer first and foremost. And we see so many breakers come out and not do that, right? They peddle shit product on customers. They see customers spend thousands upon thousands of dollars every single night, and they keep pushing more product to them without batting a fucking eyelid, right? We see this consistently happen. I've called out so many breakers in the past. I've shown so many clips where this happens night in, night out, and it's completely unacceptable. So when people come out and say, well, who cares? That's their fault. You can't help them, right? I call bullshit, right? We need to be protecting them from themselves, because we've seen how addictive, you know, this hobby can be, especially in the modern hobby where you can just click buy, right? You all of a sudden thousands upon thousands of dollars in debt. Stories like this are nothing new. We've referenced them before on the channel. We've shown it on blowout forums. I've made, you know, half a dozen videos on this exact topic. This is getting worse and worse, and it's not getting any better. And I just don't understand why businesses in this space are not doing more to protect consumers, right? You have an onus, you have an obligation to make this hobby as sustainable as possible, right? If you're sort of looking to get the quick buck off your consumer today, they're not going to be there in 100 days' time, right? You need to be looking after that long-term customer, because long-term customers mean you have long-term viability as a business. But we see so many breakers turn a bloody blind eye to this. And, you know, Mike Gio has pushed back on me in the past, I think, when I've made that statement around consumers need to be protected from themselves. But again, I just don't understand that mindset, right? I don't understand why Whatnot or Fanatics Live can't have a spend limit on their platform and implement something that says, okay, if you spend XYZ amount of money within 24 hours, within a week, we're going to block you for X period of time. Right? You see that happen on gambling apps. I don't understand why we don't see it on these platforms, especially when you have, you know, customers transacting with the same breaker night on night, right? That breaker themselves can sort of see that happening. So surely they could have triggered it. You know, if this person has really only bought from a handful of breakers, $300,000 is a lot of bloody money, right? If those guys are watching their analytics like they should be, they know that this guy's spending a lot, and they would see maybe him getting skunked consistently on products. So surely they'd come out and say, well, listen, mate, maybe you need to take a break. Maybe you need to sort of, you know, lighten up and don't come back to us within a week or two. And you guys might say, well, the breakers are already doing that, but I don't think there's anywhere near enough, and I don't think it's mainstream enough to implement things to protect consumers from themselves. And, you know, I've referenced Cherry Collectibles in the past. I mentioned them a bit earlier in this video. They definitely do, right? Their owner, Grayson, has gone on the record and talked about what controls he has in place, and that's things like automated reporting. Like, they've talked about the fact that they've seen people spend ridiculous amounts of money, and they've reached out to do sort of welfare checks or look to sort of, you know, temporarily lock them from being able to enter their breaks for a period of time. They have opportunities for people to sort of reach out to them and say, hey, I need you to not let me enter in breaks for the next 4 weeks. Can you block my account? And they've, you know, allowed that to happen. So they're sort of actively looking at it. And I understand that it's challenging because you're there as a business to make money. That approach makes sense to me. But the disappointing thing is a lot of breakers out there, I'd say the vast majority, are not doing that. And if you go enter in a break on Whatnot or Fanatics Live, or just go into those rooms and watch what's happening, the vast majority are pushing, you know, shit product down, and they're pressuring people to sort of buy more and chase that tail. And you see it happen consistently, and it just doesn't make sense. It's not conducive to a sustainable, you know, business or a sustainable industry. And for that reason, I'd like to see Whatnot and Fanatics Live do more. I think I mentioned earlier, spend limits and the like, right? They could be doing a heck of a lot more, and they're not. And it's just one of those things that's incredibly disappointing. And it's sort of made even more disappointing by people like Lemme James, who sort of made a joke about the whole situation. Now, he's got a pretty big platform for Instagram, and he makes memes all the time, which I think are pretty good value. I like me a meme or two, but I just thought this was a bit shit. And I get the thought process behind, you know, being funny about something to sort of bring a spotlight to it, but he hasn't really done that, right? He's just sort of taken the piss out of this person. That's how I've read it. They've taken the piss out of this person. It's clearly, you know, if we take this story as truth, $300,000 in debt's a fuckload of money, right? And to sort of do this and take the piss, I think is just disappointing to see. And I would have liked to have seen him talk about it, but then point people in the direction of Collectors MD and say, hey, you know what, this is all a bit of fun, but if you are experiencing issues, go ahead and check out this page over here, because they can help you if you sort of need it. And, you know, it's really disappointing again to see so many people sort of buy into the fact that this is, you know, all a joke and it's not that serious. But, you know, guys, this problem is getting worse and worse, and we need to do more to sort of protect the hobby from itself and protect our fellow collectors and protect our customers. And, you know, seeing people react to this, and take the piss out of it. I just don't think is a good look. And it just makes me think this industry is maybe setting itself up to fail. And I want to hear your thoughts on that down below. Now, in terms of the support you can seek, Collectors MD have popped up recently. They're basically a mental health service. They do some well-being support, particularly for, card collecting and sports card breaking addiction. This is their website over here, which is collectorsmd.com. And they talk about, the fact that they have, weekly support meetings and a few other steps in place for how you can sort of seek the support you need. There are a lot of collectors they've helped based on what's on their website. I've been communicating with them very briefly so far on Instagram. And I just think you sort of need to be pointing people in this direction if you know they need help or if you yourself needs help, because this is a serious issue. It's not anything that's super trivial. It needs to be taken seriously. And until it does, I think we're going to see more and more stories like what we saw on Reddit about people, struggling and getting themselves into deep holes. And it's only going to get worse when we sort of see the hobby pushing its way down a path that we've sort of seen in the last 12 to 24 months. And that is breaking being the focus, especially now when Fanatics has come out with their own repacks, these digital repacks. This is just getting worse and worse, to be perfectly honest with you. And I don't know how it's going to get better. So, it is what it is. I know people need to take responsibility for themselves. I'm not saying people can go through life being oblivious and sort of being angry at the world when they make their own mistakes. But we can do more, right? We as collectors can do more to help each other out, and businesses, breakers in particular, can do more to protect their consumers. So as always, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys and girls in the next one. Cheers.